remember that we made a motion to put on a future agenda, Jeff Calhoun to talk about the minimum, okay. So there was some.
I found out a few things
Yes.
that I wanted to just chat with you all about. So, as you may know, in 2019, the state legislature was able to pass a bill that basically says municipalities can determine their own minimum wage if they choose to. Nobody has done anything with that because of the pandemic hit pretty quickly after that, left alone. But there are other communities, Fort Collins, Boulder for sure, and a few others that are interested in raising the minimum wage in their community. Obviously, changing the minimum wage in one community will affect other communities. I think we have seen that kind of effect already in certain contracts and things like that. So the consortium of cities has decided that they should talk about this, and Marcia knows she was sitting on the consortium of cities. About the time that Marcia came off the consortium of cities and Sean McClellan on the consortium of cities, they started to create a working group. So they invited Longmont to join the working group, and I told them I don't have any council direction to do this, so I'll sit in because if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So I thought I'd better just listen in and see what was going on. They'd like to move through and do some community involvement and work with different businesses and things like that to determine if they should do minimum wages. If so, what would that minimum wage be? And then each community could decide for themselves if they wanted to do that or not. So I've been sitting in a few of those meetings, and so is Sean. That is not Jeff Calhoun, and that's not his group. So the consortium of cities is a separate group. They have been working this consortium. At the same time, Jeff Calhoun, who is in charge of
Calhoun.
Calhoun.
It's no with no L.
It's Calhoun.
It's the, I want to visit the same Jeff.
Yes. Jeff Calhoun. Sorry, Jeff Calhoun. At the same time, who represents organized labor, has also been pushing for a minimum wage increase at the $25 level. They're kind of set on what they'd like to see. They are the ones that sponsored what they called the Boulder County Collaboration Meeting last Monday. That sounds an awful lot like the consortium. They are not the same. So I believe that Jeff reached out to you to be put on the agenda. I believe the mayor thought that was the consortium of cities asking to speak, and she made the motion for Jeff Calhoun to speak. And so I just wanted to get all that straight because I'm happy to follow that motion to bring Jeff Calhoun to speak with you all. But I think you also should hear from the consortium of cities around what they're doing.
Yes.
Or maybe change that motion to be just consortium of cities, but I think more inclusive is better.
Go ahead. No, you
Well,
go ahead.
they were, I went to the meeting and we,
Yeah.
with the consortium of cities, and this was one of the ending conversations of the night, it was I said I really didn't quite understand what was going on because, and then they laid out, oh yeah, we plan to implement this in January. You have to put an ordinance. I said, and so basically I wrote back to them at a certain point here and I don't quite know Taylor
is the analyst in Boulder, who's the representative from the city of Boulder this one.
Okay, so I said that I didn't think that a minimum wage ordinance is going to happen. And there's a reason why I thought that I hadn't gotten a strong feeling from the council, although many of us attended the virtual meeting.
It was not led by the consortium of cities. It was led by the local group, right? Okay.
And so, so then I included the mayor on this so that we wouldn't have a rolling meetings situation, and then I said, I didn't believe that we would be putting it on the ballot because what Aaron kind of pointed out when we talked about the three identifying things that we would be putting on the ballot, I didn't want to step on anybody's toes in regards to that. I said if the minimum wage group would like to add something to the ballot, I suggested that they work with the Chamber of Commerce, and so then in that part of my email to them, I included Scott Cook. I thought, well, let's get that. If they really want the ball rolling, they got to get the ball rolling with the right folks.
But they're not asking for a ballot issue.
Oh.
They're asking for you all to do an ordinance that changes the minimum wage. Now, you could choose to ask residents instead. You could choose that to put it on a ballot issue instead. But what they're asking you to do, and you don't have to, and there's no dollars figured out, and I think we there's a lot of loose ends to this, but they're asking you to pass an ordinance that you all control completely.
Well, then I straightened them out. I said, I think this really is because of the fact that we could set this, and Boulder and Longmont had said we'd have people from Larimer, Weld, and Jeffco and Broomfield coming in going, wow, this is great, we've reached it to this. I mean, it would be worth their drive into our communities. And the mayor, yesterday when we were talking, briefly pointed out something I hadn't even thought of. We don't even have the housing right now to handle that, so if they chose to move here because of this, then we don't have that in place or completely worked out, probably better than some, but still working on it, as everybody is. So I said it really seemed like a state legislature issue, because they really should set it there, then we don't have that conflict.
So,
Go ahead.
so when we were discussing this in the consortium of cities, which was months ago when it was discussed, first of all, there is a state law that says that, and I haven't read it recently, sorry, it says that you can form an area that agrees, like the Boulder Consortium wants to do, that agrees to have a common minimum wage. But there's part of that law says that you can only kind of inch up. So it's not a big jump. And I think that was before Colorado raised its minimum wage last session, did it not?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, we were talking $11 or something, so it was, at the time that we discussed it, the maximum amount of the increment was going to be way less than anybody in Longmont would work for already. So I was not worried about it. And that's why I actually didn't volunteer to be on the committee, because I said, well, this isn't really going to affect Longmont very much. But that was before the state raised the state minimum. So now I'm less sure. But has anybody calculated that? What the max? Because the effective minimum wage in Longmont is about $15.50. Would you say?
It seems like a moving number, something like that, right?
But there's a lot of analysis, I think, that needs to be.
Yeah, right. So we would need to do that.
And a lot of,
1365 is what I think it's projected to move to in
That's
23.
the state. Yes, but what I'm asking is the different, when like you asked the council, because we couldn't hire a pool.
We generally not hiring anybody at a fast food restaurant for under 15.
Yeah.
And I think it may be 16.
Right, exactly. And so that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
If it's 16 now, if the effective minimum in Longmont is 16, then the state permitted increment on top of 13.25
So
still wouldn't hurt Longmont.
I think the question is though.
let me make a suggestion. So I would say, I think Councilmember McCoy with his email kind of said Longmont's opting out of the conversation. And so I don't think that's really where you want to
I
necessarily
didn't
have.
think so. I had no guidance.
Yeah, I think, let me help get more information rather than that, is my thought, is if you want to at your next meeting, if you want to continue the Jeff Cahoon motion to have him come, maybe just add at the next meeting to also invite somebody from the consortium of cities to explain that process. If you then give me permission to stay on the working team, I can continue to bring you guys in the loop and then give you that data that I think.
And they kind of wanted
we can
to.
have this conversation in public, because you should really have this discussion.
Yes.
In public.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they kind of wanted to have the working meeting between 9 and 11 sometime during the, and just,
It doesn't work for you, but I
just
could,
doesn't
I
work.
could.
But you can go and it's fine.
You
I just
can.
didn't want to lead them on either.
Yeah, right. And that's true. If this council is saying today, we don't want to be part of that, then that's, that's
I don't think we can make that decision until we hear from them.
I feel like a little.
And we've asked Jeff twice. I think it would be an insult.
Yeah.
If we said, we're gonna have somebody from the consortium.
I think I
Because
would
he does
listen-
represent the unions, and we should hear that as
I
well.
would listen to both.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so if you want to, I will get working on that, but my thought is if I can bring the two of them together at the same time so that you can hear from both aspects of it, I'll stay on the working team. You don't have to be on the working
I
team.
haven't heard from Scott Cook as of today. I'm sure he's now bringing up it's an issue with his board to have that conversation.
You should.
But that hadn't happened, and I just didn't want to do this without them. You know, they are a intricate part of this.
And there's a lot of stakeholders that I think
Yeah.
you would need to involve more that you would probably want to hear from before you make that decision.
Definitely. Yeah, question?
I'm gonna ask maybe Tim, who might remember it better because you were on the panel. It was before the pandemic, but the university women gave a really strong, I thought, explanation of the impacts of having a minimum wage. And I thought that it was very well done, and I subsequently read, other data, that, I think supports their conclusions pretty strongly. But I also believe that the consensus opinion among the members of the chamber will not agree with the university.
I would agree.
Well,
But I would say that when you all change the living wage, so for city contracts, we contract with a business, they must pay a living wage as you guys have stated in our ordinance, right? When we surveyed, there was only one company that thought that might be a hardship. Out of all 500 vendors or so, most people were like, oh, I'm already paying more than that.
Right.
And so I feel like there needs to be some involvement. We could kind of play it low and just follow along with what the consortium of cities is doing and then bring that data back to you to make that decision.
Right, and that's, the back of the envelope calculation back 6 months ago when the consortium talked about it was that the most minimum wage, the biggest minimum wage increase that the area could do was gonna be less than 1 month's living wage. So that stuff is what.
Just so
That's why it
you
doesn't
all
matter.
know, council members, that, I said, I didn't think anyone on the council that anyone on council would be against the minimum wage, especially if all stakeholders were supportive of it, certainly not me, but minimum wage group doesn't seem to include all the stakeholders yet. And so it's really critical that they do that. And it seemed like they got the one horse walking the other one not in this situation, and it seems a little disappointing.
yeah, so that message, when they come to us and describe what they are working on and how it works, then that message from council in public needs to go out.
Yeah.
That's what
Absolutely.
that's what okay.
So, what we didn't do is go around and take 10 minutes really
Oh,
fast.
sorry.
So, no, that was okay, because I led you right into it. So this pre-session was going to be on a talk about homelessness as well as the updates. And that was requested by Chiquita and Mayor Pro Tem because of what they were listening to it in LC. Am I correct with that?
Sure.
Okay, so we have to my left.
Commissioner Yarborough, right?
Not yet.
Councilmember.
But don't forget that term.
No, I'll forget, that's just how it goes, trying to be
Keep
good,
your
but
other hat over
Councilwoman Yarborough.
You're joking.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Councilmember Martin.
Councilmember McCoy.
Councilmember Tim Waters.
Oh, Harold Dominguez, city manager.
Sandy Cedar, Assistant City Manager, and I will let you have the rest of your meeting. Thank you.
Oh, that's okay, thanks, Sandy.
Thank you, Sandy.
Duncan County City Clerk.
Counselor Susan Hidalgo Faring is going to be late. She has a meeting. She said she might roll in at 6:30. She might not. So we'll just wait and see. So let's go around and do an update. And if you need help or direction or whatever, or a question about the boards or commissions that you're on, let's ask and see if anybody has an answer or advice. So who wants to start?
It sounded like you were already on mine, so I'll just finish up the last
Okay.
parts of it. We talked about homelessness at the consortium of cities. They had rescheduled their meeting to be on the same night as the RCAP, so Susie went to that.
Oh, okay.
And so I haven't checked in with, Charlie County meetings to see, what really happened, and I haven't got a chance to talk to Susie.
Okay.
And then Art Public Places was, a few weeks.
I'm very impressed.
Yeah,
Can't wait
and
for
so-
Susie to see this.
If people are interested in doing that, if you want to take a picture of both sides and put it out on social media, put it out there, I'm sure there'd be plenty of people that might be interested in this. It starts tomorrow.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I've got a bunch sort of, so I don't want to forget. This is just something to know about. I was at the water board meeting yesterday, and Ken Houston and Bob Allen seem to have this completely under control, but the Windy Gap, the Chimney Hollow project is gonna ask for more money again. And so that's, something that we need to be aware of. I've completely flip-flopped on the importance of building reservoirs because, our weather is so weird. That's just something that's on the horizon. As I said, Ken does not seem to be too upset with it, although a number of other municipalities at the meeting were pretty, oh no, not again. There is a brouhaha at the airport, and Harold, you got a letter from the board, but I think that letter from the board kind of understated the problem, and I think you may already be aware of this, but I'm not exactly sure. The hangar owners got huge tax assessment increases. And I'm not talking about the 25 to 50% that the rest of us got on our homes. I'm talking about 10 times increases. And that appears to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, Harold, if you know and I don't, but what the person on the board who was most knowledgeable had a rule whose name I've forgotten, shame on me, that had apparently not been applied, and they are now treating all hangar owners as if they are commercial property, and so they have this huge increase in the rule applied to get their assessment. Now, despite the fact that I like the airport, I don't necessarily like all the pilots, so I'm not broken up about this. However, I do like the airport, and I think it is important to Longmont's economy, or at least should be important to Longmont's economy if it isn't. And so we as a council and as a city need to, I think, spend some time talking about how we're going to react to this, because those hangar owners are not commercial operations. And we probably can't get this changed, right? Because it's not just us, it's all the airports in Colorado, the same thing is happening. But then economic health of the enterprise could be affected if all the hangar owners go broke or something. I'd be pretty broke if my property taxes went from $2,500 to $25,000, which is what they're facing.
So much, I did go to the town hall with Sonia and Kyle and Carrie McCormick. Is it a bill, Sean? It's just HH is what they were calling it.
Yeah, they were joking along,
yeah,
calling it preparation H, but,
that they need to watch that bill and vote on it in November. It is addressing.
That's a ballot question.
Yes.
And what's it gonna do?
Well, you have to read it. To me, it would be a long talk here too.
Okay.
I say read that bill and take it back to them. They need to vote and read it very carefully, because it does address property taxes.
it's, okay, so this is the thing, they're talking about lowering, like on, anybody who is not, 65 or older, there's gonna be like $50,000 off. This is rough conversation about it.
Oh,
If
so
you-
this is not specific
No.
to airport?
No, it's not, it's just
No,
about
it's
taking
commercial,
money.
it's commercial.
About commercial stuff. Now, there's something else about the airport that is kind of coming up. It should be on the horizon. First off, there's tons of apparently ag money for putting in businesses that are associated with and maybe you should keep, you remember seeing this when Tom Belsack was at NLC, he was talking about putting these pads, they're kind of launch pads for those commercial style,
VTOLs.
was it Osprey that have like the Marines use, that have the blades go up, take them up to, let's say, 5,000 feet, and then direct them forward, and then they take off. The president, when he did his survey of the Marshall Fire, when he flew over, was in something like that, military style.
Yeah.
And so, but then there's one other thing, Jeffco there now, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, I'm a little concerned about, and that is the lead in the fuel that is being dumped as people fly over communities and on the airport and into the ground, especially on the airport grounds, the concentration of lead.
Yeah, that's a big issue, and it's being looked at.
Okay, well, wait,
We're getting a
Yeah,
little.
sorry.
Yeah,
you
we're
didn't
pretty
read,
far
but-
afield,
but
because,
it's-
I do wanna know, are people dumping their fuel?
No,
or are
I
you
just
talking
think it's just
about
the
their
fact that they
emissions?
just
No.
aren't very
No.
efficient, their engines might not be efficient enough, and maybe they're burning too.
So-
So that's an old thing, and Lisa Knobloch knows
Sorry for
the,
going down
knows
that
the
path.
emissions,
Yeah, we need to move
and
on.
it's, yeah, but that's a real red herring. Okay,
So-
so, but the economics of the enterprise, which is Vans Brand Airport, I think, need to be examined closely, because we don't know what's gonna happen to those pilots. And, yeah, I can find out what HH, whatever it is, does for them, but for them to go from being taxed like personal property at 7% to being taxed like commercial property at 30% is,
And some of those hangars, commercial operations.
a few of them are, but the ones that are complaining
Well,
aren't.
most of them, a lot of them are, because a lot of them were built by somebody, and this may be what they realize. So there are hangars that person X would build, and then they lease those hangars out to other pilots, which actually makes it a commercial operation.
Right, but these are the people who got an assessment, right, that are talking. Okay, so this is not the people who are at the second level of leasing, and
That's why they got it, is because, it's like an apartment. If you have an apartment or anything and you're renting it out, it's taxed as commercial.
sure,
And so renting out airport hangars, unless it's condo, and so I think there's only 2 condo associations on that,
and
so.
there are also people who own their own.
Yeah, and what they also, I think it's a little bit different in the email. They use the cost method of appraisal.
Which email, oh,
There's a letter.
not
They
that
sent me a
letter,
letter.
that letter, yeah, but it did not have the
Which
keywords
is
that was
terrible,
important in
use
it.
appraisal.
Pardon me?
Using the cost method of appraisal is a terrible method of appraisal.
The whole thing is really screwed up right now.
And so,
But,
so
but Harold, they didn't use the keyword that is causing, that was discussed there. I can't imagine why they didn't, but they didn't. So I'm happy to run it down and find out what's about it, but, I am much less worried about the pilots or even the pilots with condos than the fact that what we could be seeing is a disruption in the viability of the enterprise.
So, 2 issues on this. So one, they were using the cost method of appraisal, Marshall and Swift valuation.
Yes,
model.
that's it.
That's what they were using. The assessor is actually using the market sales value
Uh-huh.
to assess it, which means that as they are selling their hangars, that's actually what they're using to assess the value now, which technically is not any different than any other commercial business here. The challenge with it, where Jim and I are trying to get together, is, you know, they put it in the letter of asking questions, and so we can ask the appraiser as to why they did this, but, you know, part of this where we have to be careful. I thought they wanted a meeting, but they didn't seem to ask for a meeting. But, you know, we can ask
They don't know why this happened.
yeah, and part of that where, you know, we can send these questions to the assessor, but that really has to be during the challenge component of when they're going through the process that is built into the system.
Right, and I'm not worried about answering their questions.
Right.
I'm worried about what happens if X hangars get a default because they're you know, if they're paying the taxes partly to Longmont, right?
Mm-mm.
None?
Well, no, the property tax gets paid to the county. And the county distributes it, so it goes to the county, the school, and the city. So
Okay.
we all get a portion of the property tax that are paid. But
what if the people that are paying the rent to the airport stop?
I think that has to be determined.
I understand, I'm raising the issue, because I don't think we're thinking about it right.
Can perhaps the county treasurer could answer your question?
well, if they stop paying our rent, that's a different question, which goes into our
Right, I'm
our
not
lease
worried
term,
about,
which goes into our lease terms, and then there's different cure models that come into the lease terms, and that becomes a much more
and that's
complicated.
the issue that I'm raising, because if this doesn't get remedied for those people that have had a 10X increase, then they're gonna do something that is gonna affect our income as the airport enterprise. That's my fear, so I need to have that looked into. You know, they can fight their assessments
Mhm.
for themselves, that is not really our problem. But I do think it puts the viability of the enterprise at risk if a lot of those guys have to change their business model or are forced out of business.
You said, was the airport the only one that you were? The airport board the only one?
I talked about one before that, wind gap water. No, I went to my first LMAT meeting, and that was very nice, but it's not a big thing.
Yeah.
There was no news.
I think the other council members, I think you all probably got the email about Callahan House.
Yes.
And so, being on historic preservation, I will say that it does sound like there might have been a disconnect in reports given by staff as far as the importance and what the options are concerning the concrete curbing. I don't know what Callahan, because I'm not Callahan's liaison, but historic preservation got the report that there was not the ability to recreate the curbing in a historic fashion, and so that's kind of what they heard, and so therefore had limited options about what they could or could not require or think about it. And like I said, I don't know what happened on Callahan's side of the equation that we saw in the email that was presented to us.
Yeah, there's been apparently some disconnect. So did you escalate that to staff?
I
Yeah,
sent it to you.
God, they sent something to me.
Okay,
So
they
there's-
sent it to Angstead.
So there's two different issues going on. So in terms of where the curbing hits the driveway, they can still make that consistent with the historical driveway. The challenges they were trying to deal with is in order to get the drain pan in the curb, and building the curbing that way is a little bit different. Now, in historic preservation, the designation actually doesn't go to the curb, and the curbing on 3rd Street because they sent me some images, is actually the same style of curving that was put in now. They had removed many, many years ago that curving on the other side, on 3rd Street. Let me see if I can find it.
So Callahan is only half compliant as it stands, one street but not the other.
Well, there's no compliance because that's not, the street section is not under the historic designation.
I understand that they feel that it's, that one side is the way it ought to be and the other side is.
Well,
not.
I think the big thing is not to lose the grant money. I think that's really what's driving it, not really anything else.
So staff is handling that.
Yeah, we're digging into it now. In terms of this, I did get word that in terms of the driveway and the historical component of the driveway, I don't think they went all the way to where that driveway comes out, so they can still do that.
You mean when they went, you mean they haven't torn it up yet?
Oh, they put curb in, but it doesn't, there's a point where it joins the driveway that can still allow the driveway to be put back. That's what I understand. I'm trying to find it.
Are there 2 letters? Because the one that I got said that nothing had happened yet.
Karen, I think we all got some from Karen.
The one today.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah, I didn't see that anything had happened yet.
It's in.
So it
I
happened
got
between
pictures.
the time she sent the letter and the time that anybody read our escalations.
He's the liaison for the historic press.
Doesn't have one. Callahan doesn't have
But who
one.
was, no,
Callahan doesn't.
Who is the staff, the Callahan staff?
for historic press.
Oh, historic pres is,
Well, I'm the liaison, Jennifer.
Staff liaison, sorry.
Just
Jennifer
reviewed
Hewitt.
Apperson. And I know that Glenn's been sitting in all those meetings as well, so.
The right-of-way work has not impacted the portion of the driveway or driveway apron within the right-of-way. So that's a piece on the grant.
While he's finding this, is there any chance we can look and see how many boards and commissions meet during the regular day? I assume things like the senior center, senior board would meet during the day,
It does.
and other things like that. But is there a advantage or disadvantage of having Callahan meet during the day? We might get.
They do meet during.
They do meet during the day, but is there an advantage of having them meet in the evening? If we're trying to find people to serve on these boards, address, would we find more people to?
Problem with that is that they have events paper a lot of times, so, and they need to be able to plan during the day.
So if you can look at this is the existing curbing that was on the site before it was redone. So typical curb.
So, Mayor, could they meet at the station? Would it matter whether they met at a different location than the house itself?
This is what has been put in. So the curb itself is actually the same. What they changed is the drain pan profile for the stormwater on the river. But that's all in the street. And so the actual physical structure of the curb hasn't changed in terms of this. But you can see that they put this out from stormwater to move water from that perspective. And it's still, the new curb is tying in to the driveway, and then when the driveway is redone, that'll tie in as it did before. So
it shouldn't cost them the grant.
I don't think so. Again, I still have staff working on it. The difference is, to give you a sense of what the difference is, so apparently on Terry Street, and this was all done a long time ago, they have more of the flat top curve, which I think we're talking about. but that wasn't on the Third Street side.
Okay, so,
That's what we know about it being different on the two sides.
Yeah.
Okay, so the only other thing I wanted to report is that while planning and zoning is tomorrow night, so anything I'm talking about is a month ago. In that time, the city attorney's office contacted me. As we know, as council members, we get a lot of communication about both Bond Farm and Champion Greens. And they've been very aggressive also with planning and zoning, to the point where they have rolling presentations during public invited to be heard. And the city attorney's office is worried that that is now getting to the point where it's not so much First Amendment rights issues, but actually a violation of ex parte communication. And so I imagine, I have not gotten an update lately, but that the city attorney's office is looking at ways to possibly amend the bylaws to prevent the ex parte communication violation from occurring without violation of First Amendment rights for public invited to be heard. And something that also is being considered to bring to us as city council members for our meetings as well, should this kind of thing occur for us at our public invited to be heard. So that was one thing I wanted to also bring up, because that could very directly impact us in our bylaws as well. So,
It's coming.
So,
there you go.
in other words, I was not aware that the ex parte communication, the problem that we have also applies to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Yes,
It does.
It's almost more aggressive in the Planning and Zoning
They
Commission than it
actually
is in
make
front of us.
decisions.
Well, and they have longer public invited to be heard, so theirs is 5 minutes versus our 3 minutes. So it's, they can, and they've been queuing up presentations on the computer, and
isn't it up to the chair to decide? how
well,
it's-
that's part of it is, they've been doing re-education with the chair, kind of, to solidify what he can and can't do in those kinds of circumstances, but it's it's bothered enough commissioners to the point where they made a complaint to the city attorney's office about
Yeah, this actually came from the commission, so.
Yeah.
It is on Tuesday, it's coming on the agenda.
it. So, okay. So I just wanted to make sure that the council was aware of that.
Yeah, that's, hi, Susan. Yeah.
So,
Bond Farm and Champion Greens are both in my ward and include residents that I have or had cordial relationships with. And I have informed them all that because of what's going on in their neighborhoods, I cannot discuss those with them. Because I thought the essence of ex parte communications was that one council member or board member can be influenced or have special information that the rest of the board doesn't have. So I don't understand.
So I can explain
Good.
in the sense that the city attorney's office is concerned because they continue to come to every public invited to be heard, whereas the developer does not get the same opportunity to rebut anything that's said during those comments and those presentations. So,
it's interesting information, it's nice.
Right.
Should be-
Okay, I'll be quick. So so mine also will be a month behind for LDDA. There's always a lot going on, but, so we have a parking leasing agreement with Elk Lodge. So that's more parking. Right now, we're still trying to determine where those parking spaces will be and all of that. We will be having, Longmont Creates, that's another, grant opportunity, for LDDA. And, I think you all know that Kimberly just got this amazing award. Yeah, so So my meeting is next week with LPDA, but, just mainly what we did last month was just go over grants and everything that people were applying for. Transportation, let's see, where am I at? Transportation, let me go to my notes.
I like what you say now.
Okay, where are my notes? While I'm looking for my notes, it was a great meeting. I did get an email today saying that, they cannot hear us. So, I told them that I would talk to staff and see what we need to do about, they said they can see us, but they can't hear us clearly during transportation meetings, and they can hear those at the airport meetings, but they can't hear us. So they're talking about the, Vision, Vision Zero, where, we had in public invited to be heard, and we were just talking about creating a task force, and that task force will consist of 30 to 40 people. And they're putting out an RFP for consulting service for the action plan, and creating a budget for 2024. And then just the striping was done over there by Central Elementary. Stop signs, were shifted that they found over in that area, because that's what we got a lot of public invited to be heard about that area. Interesting enough, there's been 5 accidents at that crosswalk of 4th and Ross around that area in the last 5 years. I think that pretty much everything else were just some statistics, and we did have, we talked about the Northwest Rail update, Patrick Stanley, the peak service. I don't know what my notes mean, I'm just reading them. Peak service. Sorry.
Don't ask questions.
Just we're talking about 35 miles extension, BNSF tracks. Talking about 3, you know all of this about being, the tracks, about 3-week work days, trips, morning and evening.
Yeah.
Right, and they're talking about having 119 e-bikes will be there, yeah.
We'll be where?
I think at the station,
Really?
yeah, that's what they were talking about, how would they get there, can we, pedestrian,
And no scooters.
no.
Good, you heard what they were talking about, that was like the bane of Denver's existence.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
hadn't talked anything about scooters, they haven't, so.
Well, we passed a no scooters ordinance last year, didn't
Year or two ago.
we?
And then, the fare study is out too, so I do advise, if y'all wanna know about the fare study. We will be having buses going to Walmart on 119 eventually, and 0 fare for youth ages 19 and under. So the RTD fare study was, at the transportation meeting, still talking about the fares and, across the region, so.
Good info. Susie. Hello.
I have to read.
Do you want Tim to go first?
Yeah.
It's gonna be quick, so look fast.
Okay.
There you go.
Golfers keep walking to play golf. Golf committee report. The crowd is trying to figure out what their priorities, and understanding that whatever the package is of recreation amenities or facilities, there's gonna be a line drawn somewhere, and they're trying to sort through what they would like to see us do. I will add that you probably have had some correspondence that grew out of the community meeting a couple of weeks ago at the senior center that was focused on recreation units.
Yeah.
A number of people came out of that with a point of view, not certain what was said, I wasn't there. It's Dry Creek Park, what we've identified as Dry Creek Park, kind of framed as open space.
Uh-huh.
Without an understanding of how it was purchased, the master plan that it's part of, and on and on and on.
We get so confused.
And so there was some misunderstanding about that even on the crab, so hopefully they'll work that through.
If I could add, there's, apparently there was the same information disconnect problem about the YMCA centennial land swap opportunity. And it's kind of the same thing. People in the state of high dudgeon because we're giving away public land, or because we might do things with it that they don't approve of.
And I went through with a resident a series of email exchanges trying to explain. And I said, I don't think you really are interested in the information. You've arrived at a conclusion, and I'm not going to change your mind. I'm not certain why we're going to continue doing this.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to be offensive, but it's like there was no. I was spending hours trying to explain. It's like no point because this person didn't want to be explained.
Yeah, the issue is that people are once again finding objections that we didn't anticipate.
So those are the only two, okay.
Real quick,
Yeah.
Longmont Sister Cities, I won't have that until Thursday, but reminder for those of us who are going on the weekend of the 3rd, be prepared and be ready for a great adventure. So, just so you know, don't forget, put it on your calendars.
All right, I'm from great adventure right after that note. Goes.
So, yeah, I'm trying to remember back with NGLA, so the NGLA meeting, it was, we had LHA staff come and present, and they answered a lot of questions. They did a really good job
Great.
of, defining upcoming projects as well as kind of the ins and outs of what they're doing. So, yeah, it seemed, the consensus was that people were on board, they're approving, so, it wasn't any kind of unanticipated backlash for any projects or apartments or development that LHA is doing, so, that was a positive. The youth council, they were just wrapping up their business and planning for the summer. I believe over the summer, they're gonna have their trip to Villages. They're going to continue working over the summer as well. I think in the past they cut off for the summer. But a lot of the kiddos are eager and wanting to work through the summer. So that's something that we can kind of tap into if, volunteer opportunities, that seems like something they were interested in, just participating and being part of the community. So, and volunteering where needed. In the museum, and we have another meeting coming up on Wednesday. So that's what I was trying to pull up through the last one. They're just going over the director's report, looking at exhibits. One of the things that they did talk to, and now I'm remembering, the expansion, and how it was in different phases. So for me, I found that very interesting. So they have the phase 1, which is fully funded, includes renovating the former textile storage area and converting it into offices. That should be done by the end of October. Phase 1B, configuring the courtyard, leveling out the areas so we use for more rentals, removing the pavilion and constructing a band shell stage on the far side of the courtyard, which will improve concerts. In phase 2, adding approximately 6,000 square feet of gallery space and another 7,000 feet of support space. Construction begins next year as funding allows. And then phase 3, adding classrooms, new gift shop, cafe, hands-on children's gallery, and new core history exhibits, replacing the front range rising. So it sounded like they're trying to create a more interactive space, kind of moving out some of the old and bringing in some of the new. And the board had decided to put together a resolution. I don't think we received anything. It's coming down the pipeline. And it was really just to support, asking city council to support, the museum expansion in their capital improvement, or their capital campaign.
That's basically what you brought up, Tim, wasn't it?
Well, no, I think this is a little different. My concern, and I think Susie shares it, is when they're successful, whatever that is, it's gonna be a while to raise the money. that I think we ought to be on record with, for whoever sits on council at that time. That council ought to do whatever's necessary, whether it's a ballot question or something else, but a dedicated sales tax or an approach like that to fund whatever the operating costs are. They're gonna pony up and cover those capital costs. Whoever sits on council at that time will cover operating costs.
To put a measure on the future ballot to fund the Longmont operations portion. So, yeah, and that was that. And then the library, let me see if I can find my notes. That one, they did talk about, you know, how the Friends of the Longmont Library contribute to a lot of programming and things that should be essential.
Right.
So really, we're depending on a group that really should be the extras, like providing the extra, you know, like a showcase or bringing out an author or something outside of their normal scope. And what the board had been discussing is really what they're finding is that they're heavily dependent on the Friends of the Library to fund things that should just be part of their normal budget.
So we should look at that during this budget process.
Yes, and John did a really good job at laying out, and I can't find it.
Are they giving us any kind of financial analysis as to what they need?
When I saw a brief snippet of what John was putting together, and it looks more itemized and thorough than what we had seen in the past.
Good.
Prior to his stepping into this role. So I think, you know, there's going to be a sense of clarity and of what they're really wanting and needing to
Should they bring
fund.
into account
Susie,
that?
are those numbers tied to the preferred level of funding?
I think that's it's geared towards that. There are some things that, you know, were like the must-haves,
Yeah.
and then there's more of like the nice to have, you know, and, you know, it's also like different gradients of what the priorities are. But it is looking through that lens.
Can I ask one follow-up question back to this? Because I know we're not gonna have time to do a whole lot more here. Marcia mentioned earlier in the water board the conversation about chimney Islands. And I heard also in the conversation what now the anticipated costs are. And we've had zero conversation about this, right, as a council. At least I haven't been any. I don't know if anybody else has.
Only when they presented and gave us an update.
Yeah, that was this is since then.
Yeah.
And what, they have not divided it out to the stakeholders.
Here's what I wanted to do, just to be reminded. It's my recollection, the bond proposal was for 46 million. We were going to augment that with fees to 60 million. That 60 million could have gone up or down based on how many acre feet. We fell back to 6,500 square feet, as I recall. At 60 million. We're now estimated at 70 million for 6,500 acre
Well, I
feet.
think it was 7,000.
This is just, so they haven't even come to me yet, this is just percolating its way up.
That's what, I was just giving them.
We were at 70, but I think the number, when we ended up, what we could actually, how much we actually preferred, or the participation level, I think that got scaled back to 6,500. But that's why I'm asking. It would be really helpful to me to get that up there. That's huge. That if to participate at the 6,500 acre foot level, we're now talking about an additional $10 million.
I know, and that's why I can talk about this all day, and I don't have.
Yeah, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but when we bring that back, we'll kind of, here's where we were, here's what we did, here's what the cost is. And I think, so the interesting piece for me on this is they're still talking whole numbers, they're not talking, you know, participant numbers, and so understanding is, you know, is for value, and I think there's still more work. I think it's more, this may be coming, and is that coming?
As ways to manage costs?
Yeah, I mean, that's my feedback is, what are you doing to manage your costs? But,
Well, the implications are pretty profound.
yeah.
So I'm just gonna do two things because we're gonna do on homelessness, but first of all, we need to have a urban renewal authority for the sugar mill and steam. And, the mayor appoints one of those board members. So, Harold and I were talking.
You make the recommendation and the entire council has to vote on.
Okay, all right, okay. So Harold and I talked about who we thought would be good, and we decided Chris McGilvray would be a good person, and or John Purdy. So I had coffee with Chris on Saturday. He's very interested, but he, as you know, has been appointed dean, so his plate is a little fuller. He wants some answers that we'll talk about tomorrow, and then if he turns down, he kind of really wants to do it, then we'll ask John Craig.
What about somebody, if John is busy, what about somebody in that office there, like Bill Smellings or somebody like that? Somebody like that, part-time.
Chris rose to the top really because he is on the LDDA board, and you know, they're going to work together. He's taking that knowledge, which really is. Yeah. And the other thing I want to give you a real fast update, because we were going to talk about homelessness, about the housing meeting that we had last Thursday. It was really a good turnout. Susie was there and Marcia came in as well. Thank you for attending that. At the beginning, Alberto Mendoza gave a really good update on what we are doing, what is the overall plan through the county, through all of the services that are available. And I had Don send you a list of email late, like 4:30, as to what we are offering here, just so that you have an update. Harold gave a great presentation, like he always does, on our future housing, Xenia, for the lower HUD AMI through the Longmont Housing Authority. The feedback from the churches that attended was that they had no idea as to what we were doing in the city, and they were incredibly impressed because they just assumed we were doing nothing because they see. So, what else was there? There's interest in donations. The feedback is they're interested in giving donations, emergency shelters, safe lots, and a couple of churches even said they would be interested in having temporary permanent housing for some homeless people. We need to talk about donations. How are they going to donate? Where are they going to donate? And hope is a huge part of this as far as operating. And my point of bringing this all forward is that we have to answer to our commercial and residents that they have been asking for a long time. What are we doing about it? What are we going to do? And if we get the beds, then we give Zach the ability to enforce our camping ban and move people along or give them a bed, find some place for them.
So he can already do that in the summer because the beds that we have are never full.
Well,
We can do it up until they're full, so, and I think that's what we don't know is when you start enforcement, does it fill up and then you get to a point where you can't? And I think that's where the emergency shelter starts, fits into that.
Except that, I don't know how you deal with the process, but you can move them along if there's a bed. They don't have to go to the bed, they just have to move along.
but we can say, based upon where our camping limits is, you can't stay here.
Correct.
Sure.
If they choose not to go in their space, then that's a different issue. If it fills up, then we can no longer do it, and that's where the additional
Right,
capacity.
that's why there has
That's
to be
what we're
a
looking for, is
communication.
additional
And
capacity.
then Zach is working with Hope now in terms of getting that information as the officers are on the streets. They had that meeting last week.
So that was it. We're late. I was gonna update you on the youth summit. We can do that later. And, just tell them it was good. That was great.
It's good.
You were there for half, I gave every second.
It was really good. The kids were amazing. The ideas were really, really good. Some of them were quite sad because they had pretend money that was made out like a check that they could write it to with comments, what they wanted. And some of them said, can you give my family a house? Can you buy us some new shoes? I mean, just basic. And one kid said there are a lot of homeless teenagers. Can we have another shelter for youth? And that just breaks your heart. You know, you really find, number one, they're very caring. None of them asked for football or baseball equipment. I was shocked. I thought that would be huge. But
They did ask for a basketball court.
Yes.
Things like that, yeah.
yeah. They wanted a place as well to hang out. That was a big deal. They don't have a place to go. So the process for that is going to be they're compiling all of the lights. They're compiling all of the ideas, and then the ideas are going to go to the youth council to go over, and then they will prioritize them. And I asked them that once they're prioritized, can we bring these kids back and tell them the priority list and ask them? Because they were saying to us, we always get involved and get excited, but we never know what happens. So I said, you know, we want these kids to, and then at the end they'll bring it to city council to give direction on it. And it's going to be based on the funding as well. Who wants what? How many dollars do we have? What is it going to be? And one of my suggestions is going to be that we take a portion of it and invest it for operating costs if we have anything left. But I don't. So that's it really fast.